Hey everyone, welcome to the Bruce Williams channel. In front of the camera today is the Breitling Superocean Heritage 42. Now this one is, for lack of a better term, a blingy watch. It has some real pop and presence, polish everywhere, awesome light play and natural light. It is a stunner. This is a watch that I just have an affinity for. I have a weakness for. I look at this and for whatever reason, it speaks to me. I have that connection with it. And I enjoy it. I've owned this exact watch, but in the larger 44 millimeter size. This comes in 42, 44, and 46, which to me sounds really big. But that's the thing with the Heritage 2. It fits a little bit smaller than the dimensions would indicate. So the 44 that I owned, and I'll drop in a few pictures and videos and clips of that watch, that one fit more like a traditional 42 or maybe a 43. This 42 that I have in front of the camera, this to me feels more like a big 40 or a traditional 41. It feels a little bit smaller than the dimensions indicate. And I like that. And I think a lot of you watching this, you'll agree with me. That's a good thing. You know, it's nice to have some substance. It's nice to have some weight. It is really nice to have that lovely light play and pop. And I guess you could say bling here with this Breitling. It's nice to have that in a watch, but it not be cumbersome or uncomfortable or just too unwieldy on wrist. I don't get those feelings here with this Superocean Heritage 2. And I will say I've also reviewed the Heritage 57 from the capsule collection. And that watch is a little bit more faithful to the original design from 1957, the first Superocean. But for whatever reason, it didn't excite me as much as the Heritage 2 does. I don't know what it is. Generally, I'm more drawn to the more faithful modern version of the original design from multiple brands, but for whatever reason, I'm not here with the Breitling. I enjoy this Heritage 2 42 in front of the camera, and I like the 42 better than the 44. I think the 42 is the size to get, and I really enjoy the blue version. In fact, it looks good. And in natural light, I don't know, you might be able to pick this up, but the shade of the blue of the dial is a little bit different from the shade of the blue in the ceramic bezel insert. It's a bit of a mismatch, but I'm not complaining. I think it looks really good. If I were to reacquire one of these watches, I wouldn't go with the 44. I'd go with a 42. But here's a suggestion for Breitling. I know Breitling has occasionally done a green ceramic bezel paired with a black or a white dial. I'd love to see them do like a Hulk variation with a gorgeous sunray green dial and a green ceramic bezel insert. And don't do it limited. Don't make it a limited edition. Make it a standard version. I think Breitling, if anyone there is listening to me or watching this video, I think you would be surprised at how well that watch would be received and how well it would sell. I think that's a fun opportunity. Anyways, let's continue with this review. Let's talk about the movement. What we have within this watch is the Breitling B20 caliber, which is not a Breitling caliber at all. It's actually the manufacturer Tudor 5612, which Breitling is authorized and supplied the movement from Tudor, and Tudor in return is authorized and supplied the Breitling B01 in-house column wheel chronograph for them to use within their Black Bay, within their line. And I like the fact that these two brands are cooperating and exchanging movements. I think that's a great thing. And when I owned the 44, I took it to my local watchmaker and I had him open it up because I wanted to see what the movement looked like. Was Breitling doing anything special or anything different? Or was it just maybe even a branded Tudor movement that, Tudor supplied to Breitling and Breitling just, dropped into their watch? I wanted to get to the bottom of it. And as you guys can see, this Breitling variation of the in-house Tudor movement, I think is more tastefully finished. It's a little bit more classic in its appearance, and I think more attractive than the rather austere and utilitarian blasted nature of the Tudor execution. Now, there will be some other differences. The Tudor is utilizing a silicone hairspring, which is marketed specifically as being anti-magnetic. Now, Breitling is not using silicone. They're using a ferrous alloy manufactured by Niverox. Very traditional. A lot of luxury watches carry just a standard hairspring from Niverox. And so there will be some differences. But when it comes to the specs, They both will have, a 28,800 beat per hour rate, 70 hours of power reserve, and a free sprung balance. So I look at this, I like the finish better, I like the execution better, but honestly, I think I prefer the silicone just, for the peace of mind of being specifically anti-magnetic, even though in all likelihood, this Breitling, it's not likely that it's going to be magnetized. Like, I know sometimes us as watch enthusiasts, we can kind of get maybe overly worked up about the little details. Like, I've got to buy a watch that's specifically anti-magnetic. And if I don't, then my watch will get magnetized. And most of the time, that's not the case. You'll probably be just fine with a standard watch. But anyways, I'm guilty of it too. I'd probably rather have silicone here in the Breitling. But here's the thing. I don't know whether Tudor and Breitling have some sort of agreement with each other that they will not put an exhibition case back on the movement supplied by the other brand, because I haven't seen that happen with any of the exchanged movements to date. They may have some type of agreement. They may not. I don't know. But I would like to see this movement through an exhibition case back. I think that would be a great thing. That is one of the things that Omega excels in at this price segment, is they show you that machine finished coaxial, lovely, beautiful movement that has the silicone, that has the free sprung balance, that has the black coated screws. And please excuse me if you can hear my 3-year-old upstairs having a meltdown. It's not been her day today. But anyways, let's continue here with the review. I would like to see an exhibition case back. That allows the purchaser, and a lot of first-time buyers, we're not buying Rolex, we're not buying, a $10,000 luxury watch that's hard to get. We're buying into brands like Tudor and Breitling and Omega, and it helps the consumer feel like, hey, I'm really getting my money's worth. I can see that in-house movement, even though the movement came from Tudor, right? It would be nice to see. So I think that's a bit of a missed opportunity on Breitling's part. But again, I don't know if there's agreements between the two brands to where they won't do that. It's just something of note. Now let's go in on the dial on a macro level and take a look at the details here. So we have very sharp dial work. I do see a few imperfections here, specifically on the hand, the hour hand, but overall it's very clean. I like the color play. I like the sun ray. I like the printing. And I've been on record recently saying that brands need to do less text on the dial. It's become tradition, to see all of the information just laid out on the dial. And Tudor specifically, I'm talking about the Pelagos, that thing has like a paragraph of text. And I look at my overseas, which I love. When you have a gorgeous dial that is just so sharp, it's the star of the show, you don't want to obscure it with text, and you don't want to put extra things on the dial. I will say with this Superocean Heritage 242, I don't feel the same way. Not with this one. And let me explain why. I'm not just a hypocrite. I look at this, and this is inspired by the original diver, which at the time, that era, brands had to advertise, hey, this is automatic. This is the water resistance. This is the power reserve. They had to differentiate themselves from the masses of other products on the market. And so it was very traditional. And so I think it's okay when it's a heritage model to tie into that pomp and circumstance and history. So I'm not going to knock it here. It's very organized. I do like the fact that we get the gilt signature, the classic B logo. And I love the fact that Breitling has retained the stylized font that they used on the original one from 1957. I like the date at the 6 o'clock. I don't mind that it's white, but I think this might look a little bit better if it was a matching date wheel, a color matched date wheel, because that white is not visually balancing out a large lume marker. And that's one of the negative or nitpick elements of this model is the lume. It's nothing to write home about. It's nothing special. It's present. This watch really excels in natural light. Outside in sunlight, it sings. It looks so dang good. It's blingy. It is a little bit blingy, but it's classy. It's not cheap bling. It's kind of classy bling, if that makes sense. I might sound a bit ridiculous. This is one of the things I really enjoy is the anti-reflective treatment on the sapphire crystal. Breitling puts layers on the top as well as the underside. So in some lights, it really looks like there's no crystal. The clarity is perfect. You swear you could touch the dial, touch the markers and handset, and then in other lights, you see that iridescent blue sheen, the harsh reflections of direct light, and I think that looks attractive. So overall, Breitling does a great job with the crystal, with the light play, with the presence. Now let's talk about fit here real quick. 41.9 millimeters of diameter, 51.2 overall lug-to-lug length, 14.4 in overall height, 22 millimeter lug width, tapering down to 18 millimeters at the clasp on this Milanese style mesh. And I've got to say, the mesh is cool. It hides wear and tear. It hides hairline wear marks better than a traditional bracelet. And it has that lovely flex to it. It's 4 millimeters thick, so it's very substantial. And you guys can see there are removable links, so you can get a nice dialed in fit. I really like this on mesh. I think it works better on mesh rather than if Breitling were to do some sort of oyster style, faux rivet style bracelet that would be period authentic for a watch of the era. But it just wouldn't work as well, I think, Anyways, let's continue with this. Let's talk about negative elements. I think the big one is going to come down to the clasp. The clasp feels dated at this point. It's pressed metal. There are micro adjustment positions here that you will need a tool to utilize and to make those position changes. It's all polished. It's signed. It's substantial, but it's not as good as what you would find from, say, a Black Bay or a Pelagos or the Omega Seamaster Professional, which I would argue this is in direct competition with. Breitling has kind of updated some of their clasps with a thicker milled sidewall with the flip lock that kind of seamlessly integrates, doesn't bump out like this one does, but it's not present here on the Superocean Heritage 2 42 millimeter. And the other nitpick I might have for this is going to come down to the bezel action. Now I'm going to sample the action here. It's adequate, kind of like with the clasp. It's adequate, but it's not satisfying. And when you're spending multiple thousands of dollars on a luxury diver, you want satisfying in every element. And this is just adequate. There's just a hair of back play, but overall I think is appropriate. It's just not very exciting. And I think a lot of you watching this, you're going to say, you know what? I'd rather buy a Seamaster. I'd rather buy a Pelagos. And it's hard to argue against those. Those are really solid watches, especially if it's your first time spending luxury money on a watch. But sometimes, you don't want to be logical in this hobby. This is an emotional hobby for me. And I look at this, and like I mentioned, I have an affinity for it. I like it. I don't mind the lack of awesome lume here on the watch. I like that little bit of a color mismatch on the blue ceramic and the blue sunray dial. I think this is pretty. I think this is a great size. I think this wears very well. It's vintage inspired, but it's not overly vintage. It's not too vintage. Overall, it's solid, great movement, chronometer, good accuracy. The bracelet hides wear marks very well. It feels just like a balanced design, and it feels balanced on wrist. So I like it quite a bit, but it's not the perfect watch. It has drawbacks, and there might be better purchases out there, especially for those of you watch enthusiasts that it's your first time in the luxury segment. I'd encourage you to take a look at the Pelagos or the Seamaster Professional. Now, just in summation here, just in closing, this is a watch that I would like to have in the rotation again at some point. I think this is better than the 44. This is better than the 42 that I owned. I owned the blue dial a generation ago, just the basic 42 Superocean. I've reviewed the latest or current generation of the 42. I look forward to reviewing a 44. I would review a 46 of the Heritage 2. I like the Superocean line. I think it's a fun line, but I think when it comes time to re-add one of these watches to the rotation, the 42 is the way to go. The Heritage 2 is the way to go for me. I really like it. It speaks to me. And the only thing that would give me pause from buying this blue is if Breitling did that sunray green dial green ceramic bezel, very similar to the Hulk that I'm wearing today, very similar to that. I don't know, maybe that's the one to get if they were to potentially do that at some point. And maybe put a display back on it too. That would be awesome. That would be my wish list, my Bruce Williams wish list. So guys, again, if you are looking for Breitling, if you're looking for a Tag Heuer, if you're looking for an Oris, my recommended authorized dealer is Saltzman's Watches in Rhode Island. Richard is awesome. He's a watch enthusiast, and he is the most aggressive when it comes to pricing of any authorized dealer that I've worked with. So I can definitely recommend him if you're shopping for a Breitling or a Tag Heuer or an Oris or any of the other brands that he carries. All of the links will be in the description. Thanks for watching today, guys. I appreciate it. Reach out with any specific questions you may have, and I'll see you real soon.